There are women out there with $30,000 in savings who genuinely believe that they're one bad month away from being broke. And there are women with thousands of credit card debt who feel like they're doing completely fine. And then there's the women who bounce between both of these categories. All of these women have the exact same problem. Their perception of their money and the reality of their money have completely disconnected from each other. And there's actually a name for this. It's called money dysmorphia. And research found that around 42% of Gen Z and millennials have it. So nearly half of us are walking around with a picture of our finances in our head that doesn't match with what's reality. And I want to talk about this because this isn't just some interesting psychological quirk. This thing is quietly making an entire generation of women make the wrong financial decisions during the exact decades where the right decision matters most. And I bet money that there's some version of this happening to you right now without you even realizing it. So let me show you what's actually going on. So you've probably heard about body dysmorphia, where someone looks in the mirror and sees something that doesn't really match reality. For example, they see flaws that objectively aren't there, no matter what anyone tells them or no matter what the skill or the photos say. Now, money dysmorphia is kind of the same mechanism, just pointed at your bank account. It's when the way you feel about your financial situation has detached from the facts of your financial situation. You can describe this as looking at your finances through a cracked lens. The numbers are what they are, but the lens is kind of distorting everything. So what you see is either much bleaker than the reality or much rosier. And I want to be really clear that this goes in both directions because most people only think of one side. The first version of it is feeling broke when you're not. This is the woman who has a decent income and still feels this constant low-level panic about money or feels guilty about every purchase. She's technically doing well, but she cannot feel it. No matter what the numbers say, the feeling of not good enough just never goes away. And then we have this second version, which is the opposite. It's feeling fine when you're not. And it's the woman who's swiping the credit card, keeping up with every dinner and every trip, whose lifestyle looks great and who is quietly sliding further away from her financial goals every month without telling herself it's all under control. So these are completely opposite behaviors and they form the same broken lens. Now, maybe you don't perfectly fit in either one of these categories. The description of them is also quite extreme, but you might resonate with some version of either one of these women. Now, here's what the research that I want you to sit with says. In one of the big studies on this, among the people who said that they experienced money dysmorphia, 37% had over $10,000 in savings or investing. So that's a huge chunk of people who feel financially behind, but are on paper actually ahead. And even if you don't have that amount in savings, you might still be doing well for the situation that you're in, right? You can still resonate with that. Now, let that sink in for a second, because these aren't people with a money problem. These are people with a perception problem. And a perception problem might sound harmless, but I promise you that it's not, because you don't make decisions based on reality. You're making decisions based on the perception of your reality. And when the perception is broken, the decisions break with it. So the obvious question is, where does this distortion come from? Why would your own brain lie to you about your own money? And the biggest reason is what you're feeding yourself every single day. So think about how comparison used to work. For most of human history, you compared yourself to maybe 100 people, your neighbors, your family, your colleagues, people who lived through roughly the same life you did in the same place with roughly the same money, right? But now you open Instagram or you open TikTok. Your brain is comparing you to thousands of people and not a representative sample of people. It's the most curated, most edited, most financially exceptional slices of other people's lives. You see the girl your age with the designer bag, not the fact that it was gifted to her for content. You see the new kitchen, but not the loan behind it. And here's the mechanism that makes it so effective at breaking your perception. Because you might not think that you're actively comparing yourself to these people. But when you see the same lifestyle on repeat day after day, your brain quietly starts accepting it as the norm. Not as exceptional, as normal, as the baseline. So without you ever consciously deciding anything, your internal benchmark for doing okay drifts upwards until it's completely detached from any realistic standard. And then you look at your own perfectly fine financial situation, compare it against that inflated benchmark, and conclude that you're failing. What makes it even harder right now is that it used to be celebrities only, and we could dismiss celebrities because their life was obviously a different universe. But now it's everyday people in your city, people your age, in your industry, and that proximity makes the comparison feel personal in a way that it never used to. It stops being, wow, what a life, and it becomes, am I the problem? Am I actually this far behind? There was actually a survey that asked people how much net worth they need to feel wealthy, and millennials said around $2 million, guys, and then more than half of them said that they don't believe they will ever get there. So we've all all collectively set the bar at a place we don't believe we can reach, and then we feel like failures for not reaching it. There is one more layer to this, which is that you're not just comparing against distorted images of others, you're comparing your full reality, your stress, your doubts, your Monday morning against everyone else's highlight reel. So you're comparing your Mondays to someone else's Saturdays. And of course, you're going to lose that comparison. Everyone loses that comparison. It's not a fair fight, and it never was meant to be one. So let's talk about the damage, because distorted perception sounds abstract, but the consequences are extremely concrete, and they show up differently depending on which direction your lens is cracked. So let's start with the version that I see the most in my audience, and it's a specific kind of contradiction. It's the woman who is completely convinced she's too broke to invest or do anything with her money, but who is spending money on plenty of other things. So the shopping, the dinners, the little everyday stuff that adds up. The money is there, it is just going somewhere else, and she genuinely doesn't see it. And I want to be very clear, because this is not me telling you that you're bad with money or that you need to stop enjoying your life. That is not the point at all. The point is that I can't afford to invest often isn't actually true. It feels true because the dysmorphia has you convinced that you don't have enough. But if you actually look at where your money goes, you will often find that investing was possible the whole time. You weren't too broke, you just felt too broke. So you never redirected any of your money towards your future. What's happening underneath is that investing feels like risking money that you cannot afford to lose, even when you objectively can. So the money that could be building your future instead stays in your day-to-day spending, where it feels safer, because at least there you can see it and touch it. And you keep telling yourself that you will start investing when you feel more secure. But the feeling of secure never comes, because it was never connected to the numbers in the first place. And that is brutal, specifically in your 20s and 30s, because your 20s and 30s are the compounding decade. It's the decade where the money that you invest has 30, 40 years to grow. And every year that you sit on the sidelines because you feel too broke to invest, you're not being careful. You're taking the most valuable years your money will ever have, and you're letting them expire. So the oversaver thinks that she's protecting herself from risk while quietly absorbing the biggest financial loss of her life. And it will never feel like a loss, because nothing visibly disappears, and that's what makes it so dangerous. The damage of money dysmorphia is invisible. Then there's the other direction, the overspender. If your dysmorphia runs the other way, the feeling of being behind doesn't make you hoard, it makes you give up. The research on this actually found something really telling, which is that when people feel so far behind that catching up seems impossible, a lot of them just stop trying. The logic becomes, I'm never gonna afford a house anyways. Saving feels pointless, so I might as well enjoy the money now. And so they spend to cope with the exact anxiety that the spending is creating. It is basically a perfect loop. Whichever version of money dysmorphia you have, there is a third cost that both of these versions share, and it might be the biggest one, and it's paralysis. When your picture of your finances is distorted enough, every money decision starts to feel dangerous. So you just don't decide, you don't invest, you don't negotiate, you don't make the plan, you avoid looking at any of it because looking feels bad. And the years pass, and in your 20s and 30s, the years are exactly the thing that you cannot get back. Okay, what do you actually do about this? I want to give you things that genuinely work and not just be grateful for what you have, because that advice is nothing when the problem is a distorted lens. So the first thing, and this is genuinely the most powerful one, is you replace your feelings with facts. Money dysmorphia lives in vagueness. It survives specifically because you're not looking at your actual numbers, but you are going off a feeling, and the feeling is being generated by your Instagram feed and not your bank account. So the antidote is embarrassingly simple, and it's knowing your real numbers. So I want you to sit down and work out what actually comes in every month, what actually goes out, what you own, what you owe, and I want you to write it all down, because what happens when you do this, and I've seen this so many times, is that the fear almost always shrinks, because vague dread is heavier than any concrete number. And when it's just a feeling, your brain feels the unknown with worst case scenarios, but when it's on paper, it's finite. It's just a number, and numbers can be worked with. If you're on the other side, the overspending side, the same exercise works in reverse. The numbers cut through the it's fine, it's under control story just as effectively as they cut through the panic, because facts don't really care about which direction your lens is cracked. They just show you what is real. The second thing is that you have to fix your inputs, because you can do all all the numbers work that you want. But if you then spend 3 hours a day marinating in other people's fake wealth, the lens just cracks again. And I'm not going to give you a vague social media's bad point, but I do need you to know that there's actual research showing that people who spend more than 3 hours a day on social media are significantly more likely to make impulsive financial decisions. Your feed isn't just making you feel bad, it's actually measurably changing your behavior. So be honest about which accounts consistently leave you feeling behind and remove them, unfollow, mute, whatever you need to do. And I want to reframe this because people treat unfollowing like it's petty, but it is not petty. Your brain builds its sense of normal from whatever you show it repeatedly. And curating your feed is literally curating your own perception of reality. That is one of the most financially protected things that you can do. The third thing is that you need to have your own definition of enough, because if you don't define what is enough for you, enough savings, enough income, enough security, then the internet will define it for you, and the internet's answer is always more than you have. So decide, what does financially okay actually look like for your life, for your goals, your version of freedom, and write that down too. And the last thing that I want to say, and I want to say this genuinely, if the money anxiety runs deep, if it's rooted in how you grew up, in real financial trauma, in something that facts on paper don't seem to touch, then that's not something to try to fix alone. Financial therapists actually exist. This is a real field, and some lenses need more than a spreadsheet to fix, and that's okay as well. Here's the one thing that I want you to walk away with. Almost half of our generation feels financially behind, but feeling behind and being behind are two completely different things. And most of us have never actually checked which one is true for us. We've just trusted the feeling, a feeling that is being manufactured by feeds full of other people's highlight reels. So check, look at your real numbers, fix what's feeding your brain, because your 20s and 30s are too valuable, mathematically too valuable, to spend them either frozen in fear or spending your way through a story that isn't real. And if you want to learn more about making money and setting it all up so that your brain can finally relax a little bit, I would love to invite you into Rich Girl Academy, my membership and community, where I cover all things money, from investing to budgeting to building wealth, and where you can ask me anything along the way. You can now try Rich Girl Academy for free for 7 days with the link in the description, and I would love to see you there.